Hey, just before the video starts, I want to give a fair warning that there will be minor Dawn Trail spoilers. Nothing too crazy, just a bunch of visual stuff, but I recommend you finish the Dawn Trail MSQ before watching this. 11 months ago, I made a video about my experience with Dawn Trail's first raid tier, specifically doing it alone on Party Finder. In the description, I made it clear that I would not do another video like this, and wow, am I glad I committed to that decision. The jump in difficulty throughout this new tier made progging on PF so much longer and mentally drained me. If I tried the same thing here, I would be 4 videos behind my self-imposed schedule. That being said, there's so much cool stuff in this tier to talk about that I just had to share my thoughts on it. So, let's not waste any time, because we're starting with a bang! The Cruiserweight Division's introductory fight is up against local party animal, Dancing Green. Aside from having a vibe that's right up my alley, he utilizes the feral soul of a frog. How is that supposed to enhance his combat capabilities? I don't know, but it gives him a cool Greninja tongue scarf and a squad of frog backup dancers with afros, so I guess it balances things out? Now let me tell ya, before the Savage fights dropped, I was already sold on the entire tier with just this first encounter. It was such a great fight that the rest of the tier could be the biggest piece of abysmal dog shit, and I would still consider it good. Thankfully, these general thoughts transfer over to the Savage version nicely. What makes the fight so fun is how the mechanics are directly tied to the music. Every time you pull the boss, the song restarts. Once Ensemble Assemble completes, the song gets interrupted, plays a quick sound effect, and starts back up at a different point. And the 2, 3, and 4 snap twists cleave one half of the arena in half beats, third beats, or quarter beats, meaning you can completely ignore the cast bar and figure out when to dodge just by listening in and looking at the boss. Not only that, but sometimes the music will also be interrupted to emphasize the snaps.
We're just getting started! Keep grooving, baby!
Music is in this fight's blood, to the point where nearly every mechanic has some kind of music reference. Deep cut, flip to A side, or B side, do the hustle, and celebrate good times, come on! My favorite mechanic has to be Disco Inferno. Not only because the funky Floriowies are fun to work around, but because I have to respect the sheer audacity of the devs to force downtime on raiders by making them stand in a spotlight and dance for a solid 4 seconds. Plus, the dance is fun to watch. All of this comes together to create a fight that I was more than happy to constantly wipe to. I didn't do that for long though, as this is one of the easier fights in the Arcadion. It's arguably easier than Black Cat. But despite how easy this fight is, the sheer quality of the fight outweighs this tenfold, making this my favorite fight of the entire tier, possibly the entire raid series. I could go on, but at that point I'd be talking about the entire fight. But before we move on, I gotta give attention to the Enrage, where the music starts to build up to an explosive finish. It's really novel to hear a 14 song actually end in-game. Damn, this is such a good-ass fight. Now, let's move on to the infamous second fight. So, Stui, how's been your week 1 Savage group?
Oh, it's been really nice. They invited me to play their samurai, and it's been pretty okay. We went into M5S and got a pretty quick clear. Nothing. It's really just like another Savage fight, you know.
Yeah, you seem to have a positive experience overall. I'm really excited to get into it. Just gotta wait for Zelenia to drop her goddamn weapon so I can actually do the fight.
You've been on that for like a week now, haven't you?
Ugh, yeah. Let's not focus on that. What about M6S?
You know, the first half is fine. You know, it's like pretty basic Savage mechanics that you would have expected after playing the normal.
Alright. What about the second half?
I don't want to talk about the ads. The ad face, no, the ads, no.
Huh?
I still hear the tag screaming about the yan.
Huh. Maybe his group's not that great?
And they're all Ultimate Raiders. I'm raiding with all Ultimate. We've been stuck on it for 4 days. We thought we were not doing the right strat. Turns out, no, we were doing the right strat.
No.
We just...
This is Sugar Riot, a graffiti artist who uses the power of slimes to become a modern-day pictomancer. Now, let's just cut to the chase and talk about the main mechanic that takes up 2 minutes of the encounter. Soul Sugar, or, as the community calls it, ads phase. This is an absolute bastard of a mechanic to put in the second fight of a raid tier, and it has absolutely nothing to do with Sugar Riot herself. Most of the time, all she does is summon a selection of 5 different enemies. These are what make the mechanic hell. But what does she summon? The Mew is the least threatening of the bunch, doing light damage but making up for it by being the most common, and enrages when Sugar Riot casts Ready or Not. The Yan is the complete opposite, doing absurd damage but being less common, and if one gets too close to a Mew, they upgrade their damage to ludicrous, guaranteeing a wipe. The Gimme Cat drains the entirety of the limit break bar, jumps around for a bit before jumping to a random player, casting an AoE that, if you get hit, gives you the usual damage down, and reduces your max HP. After doing this 3 times, the cat will do an Enrage cast. Now, while everyone can bait the cat's AoE, you can avoid baiting it if you get tethered to the Feather Ray, who will tether itself to the first person who damages it, dropping puddles that give a dot if you stand in it for too long. And those puddles do not go away until the end of the phase. The final enemy is the Jabberwocky, aka public enemy number 1. He will target one of the healers, lock them in place, and walk towards them. Once he reaches his destination, he will instantly kill them, then proceed to take out the rest of the party one by one. Luckily, he can be stunned. Sugar Riot will summon these guys in 4 waves. Wave 1 is nothing crazy, just burst down the Yan, then move on to the cat. Wave 2 is a little tricky, as long as the melees, or god forbid the tanks, don't accidentally damage a Ray, you can take them all out, as well as deal some cleave damage to the Mews. Wave 3 is when the Jabberwock spawns, but not only do you need to deal with that, but immediately after it goes down, you have to deal with the Mews, as by this time, Ready or Not is coming, and 4 Mews have spawned by this point. Also, there's a second cat, don't forget about him. Wave 4 is when shit gets real, as it contains one of every single enemy type, doubling up on Rays and Mews. Now, while everyone and their mother likes to single out the Yan as their nemesis, and for good reason, as this wave has 2 of them shredding the off-tank's health like crazy, but for me personally, I fucking despise the Gimme Cat. Here's the thing. In this wave, both ranged DPS take the Ray's tethers, and the optimal place to bait the puddles is on the very edge of the arena, which means when the time comes to focus on the cat, it is nearly impossible to consistently damage it as it jumps out of my range, only to jump back in my range for less than a second, and swapping between this many targets on controller while also keeping the GCD rolling is so goddamn tedious! And make sure nobody dies at any point during this 2-minute mechanic, because if that happens, it'll cause either a chain reaction that annihilates everybody or lowers your party's damage output to the point where you don't make the light DPS checks required to beat the phase. So, with all this ranting about ads phase, you probably think I despise this mechanic, right? Nah, you kidding? This is one of the best mechanics in the Arcadion. It does what no other Savage mechanic in recent memory has attempted to do: make players consider when's the right time to use their AoE skills. To use my main job as an example, at the beginning of Wave 3, if the first set of Mews haven't died yet, I may actually use Scattergun on them while waiting for the Jabberwock to become targetable. And with Wildfire, I have to consider which target I want to throw it onto. Do I use it on the second Ray but risk it dying before the effect triggers? Or do I play it safe and throw it onto the healthier Mews or Sugar Riot herself? You can sneak some bonus damage if you time a ranged limit break before the Gimme Cat seals it. In fact, as gear got better throughout the weeks, I've stopped using any mitigation in the first half of the fight just so we can potentially utilize a mechanic to generate more limit break gauge. Hell, I've even seen some people throw around the idea of using Bioblaster on the Wave 1 Mews and Sugar Riot. since that skill is only a gain on multiple targets if the entire dot gets utilized. And the feeling of clearing all 4 waves and being rewarded with a full limit break gauge is unmatched. And now, we've reached the threshold where most of my talking points about the fight sorta evaporate, because this fight is carried by this singular mechanic, as the rest of them are really simple. The 2 exceptions about this have to be Lava Phase and the Tank Buster. The Tank Buster is cool because its targeting isn't based on aggro, but rather proximity, as it targets the closest and farthest player, so everyone else has to huddle around the sweet spot in between while both tanks need to get hit with opposite colors. This one definitely belongs in the pile of cool Dawn Trail Tank Busters. I bring up Lava Phase because, for some reason that I still can't pin down, every time I wiped this mechanic, it was almost always because one of the healers screwed up. Like, rarely was it ever because of a DPS or a tank. If any healer mains who did this fight fairly early are watching this, can you throw an idea of why this is the case? Because this is the one thing about this tier I need an answer for. And with that, I'm done talking about this fight. I mean, I could talk about the music, but there is no opinion I can share, positive or negative, without it sounding like the whitest shit in the world. While Soul Sugar is a fantastic mechanic, the previous fight was more consistently enjoyable, so Sugar Riot takes second place. Huh. I guess that means this video also includes a ranking. Well, in that case, let's talk about the fight that had the potential to be the hardest one of this bunch. Well, if it isn't our old buddy Brute Bomber. Looks like he didn't appreciate his beatdown last time and set us up into a grudge match. Except this time, he's using multiple Feral Souls at the same time, transforming him into a chimerical abomination, the Brute Abominator. Now, if Dancing Green was the fight I was the most excited about, this fight was the one I feared the most. When the patch first dropped, this fight quickly became regarded as the hardest of the normal raids. The sheer amount of damage this monstrosity dished out was bonkers! What kind of fucked up nightmare was the Savage version going to bring to the table? One Brute Abominator later. What the hell was that? This fight is so disappointingly easy. These mechanics are on the same level as an extreme trial. To give credit where credit is due, I do think Debris and Demolition Deathmatch are cool mechanics. The Tank Buster is a fun way to instill fear into the rest of the party when the boss makes a sudden 180. And there's an interruptible mechanic! Let's go! Fizz Ring Sweep! But yeah, the only thing that makes this any different from being an extreme trial is that the damage output is way higher, so how else can this be considered savage, let alone the third fight in the tier? Well, let me tell you. They made the DPS check unfairly tight. For most other Savage fights, if your gear wasn't that great, you could get away with a few damage downs or deaths. By comparison, this fight demands perfection, and this is where my biggest complaint with the fight lies. This is a shallow, uninteresting, and boring way to make an encounter hard, as it creates a fight that is frustrating for all of the wrong reasons. And it shows since this is the only fight in the tier with a noticeably strict check. Some of you might be thinking that the next fight has this issue, but that's most likely because you got grouped up with the greediest DPS possible, who think it's a good idea to not use pops to reach the second phase in a prog party where the prog point is not even halfway through said second phase! It really sucks because the aesthetics of this fight are sick as hell, especially that music. It is by far the best track in the whole tier. But that can't save it from being the worst fight in the entirety of the Arcadion. Now that this grudge match has concluded, let's move on to the final fight. Huh. I've only used about an hour and a half of my reclear footage. How much time is left in it? The champion of the Cruiserweight division is Howling Blade, who utilizes the Feral Soul of Fenrir, a legendary wolf. So obviously when he invokes the power of said soul, it transforms him into a furry beast, or he could turn into a Gundam. Okay. Anyway, this isn't your standard run-of-the-mill championship battle, as this battle has both fighters' purpose in life on the line. As an aside, in the story when putting this wager on Howling Blade, he asks the Warrior of Light what their life's purpose is. You can respond with wanting to help others in need. If you do, not only is he not taken aback, but he actually double downs and tells you that if you lose, you're not allowed to help people. In public. While being recorded. Yes, this is still a fantasy game, let's not dwell on that. This fight is a good example on how to actually make a fight with relatively easy mechanics hard in a more interesting way compared to Brute Abominator. Instead of relying on a tight DPS check, most of the fight's difficulty lies in the fact that the arena is very small and the mechanics resolve really fast. Just take a look at Eminent and Revolutionary Reign. He starts casting for 4 seconds, jumps to the edge of the arena, starts another cast that lasts for 1 second, and dashes to the opposite end, and starts another 1 second cast that attacks the top 2 players in aggro, and both healers. Of course, this can be a double-edged Howling Blade, as is the case with Millennial Decay and Beckon Moonlight. Hey, that's me. Where the AoEs are so big that somebody is gonna find themselves getting murdered, which is bad because everybody needs to be alive for the end of Millennial Decay, and it's one of the earlier mechanics, so I hope for your sake that you've already mentally prepared yourself for Millennial Disappointment. Gotta mention one of the mechanics is basically the Slice is Right, Yojimbo's Gold Saucer minigame. It's not actually that hard, if anything it's easier than the entire minigame it's based on, but since I brought it up in my Final Fantasy X review, I might as well give it the brief mention here. Ads phase is fucked up though. It's no Soul Sugar, but I swear, this mechanic sucks big time for me and my fellow machinists, because by the time this mechanic forces downtime onto you, that means for the rest of the encounter, Chainsaw's cooldown is going to be out of sync, forcing you to shift your skills around for your next burst window. But wait, that's not all, because if you clear the phase too quickly, Air Anchor will go off cooldown right after the next time the boss becomes untargetable. Of course, I don't care how many times this game knocks me down for playing Machinist, I don't plan on swapping mains. Unless it gets a stupid rework, which it does not need. Aside from that clunky side effect, this is a solid ass fight. Except, much like last year, this fight has a second phase completely unique to the Savage version, triggered by depleting all of his health and playing a cutscene in transition between the phases. Much like Wicked Thunder, Howling Blade refuses to accept defeat and does a quick Virgil impression and fully taps into Fenrir's power, while also letting know his favorite Maroon 5 song. Now this is a sick design. Surprisingly enough, there's still a lot of tech implemented in it, but this time you can actually tell this is meant to be a fusion of a man and a wolf. As for the fight design, this phase is built around 5 platforms surrounding the boss. Sometimes the party splits between 2 platforms, you need to avoid 2 of them because tank busters can affect entire platforms, or even bait a specific platform to be destroyed. This fight just utilizes it in such unique ways and oh shit, we wiped. Well, I guess we'll start back at the beginning of phase 2. This is the one part of the fight I absolutely despise. Here's why. Number 1, watching the exact same cutscene every single phase 2 pull gets old fast. Number 2, when the cutscene ends, it never lines up with burst, so I have no idea what I'm doing with my rotation. You may ask why not hold burst? Well, that leads into number 3. Getting into phase 2 requires using pots, as those are the best way to buff damage, meaning that if you don't craft your own, just progging phase 2 has a hefty cost. Assuming you even see phase 2 to begin with. Technically you can enter the phase by only using 1 pot in your opener, but let's be real, that's only happening if the entire party has good gear and clears every mechanic perfectly. This whole no checkpoint thing worked with Wicked Thunder because both forms shared the same health bar, and the transition between phases was implemented in the fight's design, with its own mechanic to solve. Anyways, let's talk about the fight, right? Twofold Tempest is pretty cool. Juggling tethers around while also baiting AoEs makes for an engaging mechanic, especially considering it's one of the mechanics that limits your abilities to swap platforms. I love Champion Circuit. The split-second decision-making is another great example of this fight taking a simple mechanic and making it really sick. It is quite literally dodge the simple AoEs and make sure you're on the right side of the arena 5 times, but really fast. In fact, for as much as I hate the requirements for getting into this phase, I will say that the pacing for this phase is great. There is almost no room to calm down and collect your thoughts. It is just mechanics one after the other. And then there's Enrage. Remember when I mentioned that the platforms can be destroyed? Well, for the Enrage, Howling Blade slowly destroys each platform. Such a cool visual and a great way to signal the end of the fight. By the way, turns out the day I cleared, I should have bought a fucking lottery ticket because I somehow skipped progging the last few mechanics and cleared on the exact same pull.
You're strong, I admit, but I am the one who will win.
What the fuck?! That was my first time seeing Champion Circuit Lone Wolves for Men. What the fuck?! How?! How the fuck?! What the how?!
The match is decided! Victory goes to the challenger!
Well, I guess I know what's my August video. And there you have it. Another year, another Savage tier completed. There are some ways that I think the previous tier was better, like how more approachable it was and the fact that it unlocks an ultimate, but Cruiserweight blows it out of the water in so many more ways. The music slaps, the fights are more engaging, and the character design is so damn cool. Before I end this video, I'd like to give a few shoutouts to Stui, Nyx, and JT for helping me out with prog and re-clears. Without you guys, I probably wouldn't even attempt Sugar Riot. And you know what? Unlike last time, I actually got the mount fairly early. I wonder what it could be. It's a Cybertruck. Fuck this game. Fuck this game. This game is so fucking stupid. Why are all the Savage mounts so fucking ass this expansion? God! Oh yeah, by the way, Howling Blade is a Giga Bronze Head.